FM News Talk 97.1. On-demand audio.
Joining me right now for the first time ever, we talk to him every week, sometimes multiple times a week, Stephen Yates, D.C. International Advisory. It's so good to finally be here with you.
Excellent to be in person and at CPAC.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you get to hear any of, you caught one of the speeches from the senators, didn't you?
I did. I listened to Senators Rubio and Paul. And both of them they talked about some things I care a lot about in foreign affairs, and so I listened particularly to that.
What stood out to you the most?
Well, I thought Marco Rubio, interestingly, talked about this concept of a China dream that is out there that the new Chinese leader is trying to perpetuate, and it has actually some scary ideas in it, including their determination to exceed America on all fronts, economic, military, strategic influence. It's an interesting long-term wake-up call, and so I'm glad that he's sort of reminding people. He has a large audience, and I'm glad that they're getting to hear that the world is not all about just the Middle East, that there's this sleeping giant out there.
And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, and I'm glad that he addressed that, because that's something that we're sort of like in a friend. I don't know how better to describe this except to say we're in a frenemy kind of situation with China right now. And one of the things that concerns me is when I hear the administration, and this ties into national security and foreign relations as well, when I hear them talk about energy, and they keep saying they want to push us more and more towards solar, more and more towards all of the things that are materials that are monopolized by China, those rare earth metals. And that means if we're going to be going so far into this, green tech industry, green energy, we should probably have a good relationship with the individuals who are essentially controlling that market. And here it is, we're accusing each other of hacking each other's, businesses and so on and so forth. I'm not quite sure how that's all going to be reconciled, Stephen.
Well, I think it's going to be a competitive situation for a long time to come. Competition sometimes is friendly, sometimes it's not. And there's going to be elements of both, certainly, in this relationship. And we also need to remember the Chinese people are not their government. They didn't elect this group of people, and they don't represent all of their people. We should be doing things to have good relationships, economic and otherwise, with the Chinese people. The energy situation is troubling because they say here all of the above, except it's not all of the above. It's all of the alternative. And you're absolutely right. The alternative stuff, the technology, is primarily manufactured and exported out of China. And so if something goes wrong in that political relationship, there's a lot of risk.
It seems like we would be trading one for another, going from oil dominated by the Middle East to rare earth metals dominated by China. Yeah,
it would be a novel concept to rely on what we do here in the United States and get out of our own way, but too much common sense for the current markets.
Yeah, I mean, the last I read, it would take 10 years to even set up. We don't even have a rare earth metal mine. It takes something like 10 to 12 years to even say. And people don't understand, and I notice the left does not understand that being self-sufficient where it concerns energy, that's a national security issue. You don't want to have, because these are volatile relationships on either side. It just seems to make so much sense, and I'm glad that he hit that. I'm glad that he hit on that.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important.
Now, and Senator Rand Paul, you and I were talking before we went on air. He actually mentioned the drone situation again.
He did. Of course, both of them were good at self-deprecating humor. So Rubio began with references to water. Rand Paul began with references to large notebooks full with material sufficient for 13 hours of conversation. They say I only have 10 minutes, but we'll see how long I can go.
Oh, that's great.
So he had a lot of references to the filibuster, which was very entertaining. But the subject of his filibuster was on drones, and while I think that really resonated, and that's a positive for him, in a way it's a very niche issue. And I think in this audience, an opportunity to hit a broader context was perhaps somewhat missed. But he's a guy that's going to be around for a long time and get a lot of attention in the years to come. I don't think it's hurt him in any way. It's just I thought the contrasts of a broad vision from Rubio and sort of a niche message from Rand Paul probably isn't the fairest comparison of the two.
Do you think that CPACs in the past, I've noticed, everyone's always been very focused. the last one was before, election, so we were very focused on domestic issues. But I kind of am getting the feeling that, especially after Senator Paul's filibuster, the drone issue being put front and center, it's a twofer. It's civil liberties and foreign policy now that seem to be the total focus of CPAC this year.
Yeah, and I'm all for big issue debate, and I think that conservatives actually do a good job of that when you get into these kind of forums. You know, you get to have a big conference like this, you have the main speakers, there's some breakout sessions too. I went to one of the breakout sessions that the Foundation for Defense of Democracies did on Iran. And it was good to hear people talking specifically about the challenges that we face out of Iran. There's a lot of home issues here too, and a lot of organizations pushing those things. But I think you're right that there's more of the foreign policy, international flavor to this, probably thanks to the drones.
Right. Now, and in terms of Iran, this is the other big topic as well. How do you? I feel like what is it? Sound of Music. How do you solve a problem like Iran? I'm not even sure how to begin, because it seems like sanctions don't do anything.
Right.
Nothing has a real effect. Nothing's deterring them. Nothing.
Well, I think that the sanctions have an effect. They're just not having the effect that the people who sell them say that they would have. They're not going to change the strategic choice of someone who seeks the world's most dangerous weapons. You don't arrive at that decision lightly, and you aren't really in a position of being deterred away from that. There have been very, very few countries in history who've moved away from it. South Africa is one of the only examples of voluntarily giving it up. And the other, unusually, was Libya, and it wasn't entirely voluntary. He was afraid he would be next on the axis of evil. He wasn't even on the list, but he was afraid he'd be next.
Right.
So with Iran, it's a very, very serious situation. Where to begin, it's very, very difficult, because I have to separate for the fact that I have zero faith that the current administration really wants to or even has an idea of how they would really resolve this. And I think they're just buying time.
And especially with the three musketeers now running our foreign policy. That just absolutely, every time I think about it, it just terrifies me.
Yeah, our government has suffered people running with scissors.
Yeah, well, you should be terrified. Here I have Stephen Yates sitting across from me, the man who advised Dick Cheney, telling, you should be terrified.
Yeah.
I'll sleep well tonight, guys. Sorry about that. I just scared everybody out there listening. Tell me something like, Dana, it's going to be okay. Why? I don't care. I mean, think about these are the guys. These are the individuals who are going to be engaging in diplomatic relations with these leaders. I don't know what they're going to sell them. Here we had Barack Obama whispering, well, I'll be a little bit more flexible after the election when he was talking to Dmitry Medvedev. I don't know what they're going to sell these people.
Well, I mean, when we're looking at the personalities and the leaders at the top, I think there's a lot of reason to be afraid. But as a limited government kind of person, we've suffered fools at the top on multiple times. And our systems are built so that a lot of important people are doing important things regardless of who's at top. And there's only so far the system can really go before the checks and balances of common sense people have to start to play some kind of a role. It's frustrating when they don't play enough of a role, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people in our military and in the civilian service of the Department of Defense that care very, very much about protecting America and protecting what we believe in. And we have had presidents of varying opinions and capabilities who have been their commander-in-chief, and the Republic survived. I think that we shall too.
Fingers
it's
crossed.
Just that we're increasing risk unnecessarily, in my view.
Yes, yeah. Stephen Yates, DC International Advisory, DCAdvisory.org. I am so glad to finally be here with you.
Great to be here together.
Thank you for being on with us every week, because people love listening to you, so thank you.